Randy, let's start off, though, not in San Francisco, but in Santa Clara. That's where the 49ers are now. Kind of miss Candlestick Park, even though it was a dump. Do you agree?
I do miss Candlestick. We had a lot of events there. I won't say games, but a lot of events there that were dictated by the surroundings there. And it's, of course, I grew up a San Francisco Giants fan, so I miss it for a
Ah,
couple reasons. But
yeah.
yeah, I like old Candlestick. It was kind of cool.
There's nowhere I've felt colder than an August night at
Yeah,
Candlestick Park. Let me tell you,
no
watching a
doubt.
doubleheader, Giants Dodgers down there. Woo! We used to
Yeah,
drive over from Sacramento where it'd be 105 degrees. You're wearing shorts. Ha!
yeah,
At night at Candlestick Park, you better have about two parkas on and earmuffs.
no
It
doubt.
was unbelievable.
And for
Um,
baseball and football, the wind was always blowing, so it always made it an adventure, and you never knew
yeah,
what you were going to get
yeah.
into. That's for sure.
One of my highlights there sort of involved you a little bit in that Mike Holmgren's final game as the Packers head coach was there, and we were
Hmm.
anticipating the Seahawks might hire him.
Yep.
And so I was a Seahawks beat reporter. I was down there. How about this? We got to go down on the sideline at the end of games, and the media did. So I was standing right about at the line of scrimmage, I think, somewhere around there when Steve Young threw the fateful touchdown pass to
Right.
Terrell Owens to win the game and end Mike Holmgren's run with the Packers. I wonder if the Packers had kept winning, if Holmgren would the Seahawks have filled that job? I wonder if history would have been different.
A lot of fates were decided on that completion. Trust me, and a lot in Seattle were decided. And
Yeah.
well, obviously, I was on the inside of that one. To answer your question, I don't believe they would have waited because I was in the middle of
Yeah.
making that decision with Paul Allen's group with Bob Whitsitt, and we talked about it. It was one of those things where I don't know if we'd have waited another week, and that's how
Yeah.
quickly and had the search advanced at that point. So yes, the fact that they were out changed the landscape. And those of you who don't
Wow.
remember, it was the touchdown from Steve Young to
T.O. Terrell Owens had dropped
To.
a bunch
That's
of
right.
balls that day, and then he made an
Yes.
amazing catch and got smacked in the end zone.
Yep. That's exactly
Uh,
right. So yes, the fate would have changed for a lot of families and a lot of people, I believe.
and Jim Haslett might have been one of them. He was in line to possibly be the next head coach of the
and,
Seahawks.
and
So,
you and I laughed a lot about it, and Jim still laughs about it to this day. How he was left on the curb, and all of a sudden
yeah.
he gets told that the Seahawks are hiring. I'm like,
Yeah,
oh,
oh, yeah, yeah. Absolutely. So a little history there, a little walk down the lane. We'll go to current day 49ers right now. And basically, we heard earlier in this week that Trey Lance and Sam Darnold might share the number 2 quarterback duties, but now reports have come out saying Sam Darnold will be the number 2. The team is open to moving Trey Lance, who was not at practice on Wednesday. What do you think, Mr. GM?
well, it's a dynamic that every time I hear the Trey Lance saga and what's next, I go back to, and it's just history that's water under the bridge now. But the fact that what did they give up to get him again now? They
Yeah.
traded up before the draft 2 years ago or 3 years ago. I've lost track of days um, to get a quarterback, and this was done 2 weeks ahead of time, maybe 3 weeks ahead of the draft, right? And everybody's scratching their head. Well, who are they going up for? If you remember, the word on the street was they're going up for Mac Jones,
Yep.
and then somehow in that 2 week window, that became Trey Lance. So I'm not sure either would have been worthy of that pick as it's turned out, but they gave away the farm to get up to 3. And then after they got him, obviously he was one of those kids who had a limited body work, who was probably a year away from being a year away, one of those type deals. And it's just never lined up for the kid. I actually feel bad for him.
Oh, yeah.
Um, it's one of those things where all of a sudden you're picked that high to be the savior of a franchise, and every time you get one step forward, there's 2 steps back in the development process. So it is a penthouse to outhouse story of now I don't know how to answer it, Mike. I don't know what happens
Well,
to him. I think they made it sound like he was in a competition with Sam Darnold. I think to keep him in the game, to keep him alive, to keep him from being discouraged, and in hopes that maybe he would impress somebody in one of these games to where they may create a little value for them. I don't know who's going to give them much for
nothing.
the third string quarterback, but that's what it looks like he's become right now.
So when I was going around earlier this offseason, I talked to an NFL coach who had some insights on the situation, and he said the 49ers are just praying someone will give up something meaningful for Trey Lance so they can have a kind of a softer landing to what so far is looking like one of the worst trade ups you could ever imagine. But here's the thing that shocks me, Randy. None of this is surprising. Nobody thought Trey Lance was ready to plug and play in year 1 or 2.
No,
nobody thought that. You said, and everybody's, you said it again today, year away from being a year away. This was a developmental prospect in every way. And so he has started, I believe, 4 games. I went back and looked today at quarterbacks drafted in the last 20 or so years in the top 3 picks. In the first 2 years, like all of the other ones had started at least 11, 12, 13 games, and some of them a lot more before there's any sort of an evaluation made. You throw on top of it, he had an injury.
Yep.
So you're telling me that you moved up that much to get a specific guy, which I do think they traded up for Mac Jones and then somehow ended up taking Trey Lance. I do believe that's most likely. But none of this should surprise you that Trey Lance isn't ready right away.
No.
And so that's the weird, bizarre part to me about the whole thing.
So is Trey Lance done as a 49er for good or just for now again?
Well, it depends if they trade him, but I don't imagine they're going to get any sort of an offer, right?
No, but let's say Brock Purdy, sprains his ankle next week and Sam Darnold plays like Sam Darnold has played up until now. Then what happens? Is there a chance that he gets a career that's resurrected, or are they going to move off of him at this point?
I think there is a chance too. I don't think that it really makes sense for them to trade him.
Yeah, for as little as they'll get.
Nothing, little as they'll get. And the upside with them is probably higher than it is for whatever pick they're going to get. If I were them, I would be I'd be saying what we said is, look, we drafted Trey Lance knowing that this was a long-term project and that he needed some seasoning just based on his body of work in college. And so unfortunately for him, he was injured early and he just hasn't had a chance to really get traction yet. In the meantime, Brock Purdy has done better than anyone expected. And that's just life in the NFL. That's the way that it happens in the league. But we're not giving up on anyone at this point. We have 3 quarterbacks who all need to prove themselves to different degrees. And we're confident in our situation that one of them will. And right now, Brock Purdy has done enough to earn the starting job. We think we can go all the way with him. Just say that. Right. Yeah. And then just move on. Couldn't you say that?
And maybe they will. I guess we're trying to project what they may say or what their position may be. I agree with that totally. I think that's what they could say. He's played as much as Jordan Love has played, and Jordan Love sat there for 3 years, right? And now look at what's being said about Jordan Love. He gets it. He's had his time to learn the system. There's a learning curve that is different for every one of these quarterbacks every year. I think you're going to see it this year with the batch that came out. I think there's going to be a learning curve for 2 of them. I think Bryce Young will come along sooner than those guys. He has some other issues. We talked about that. But where's Anthony Richardson going to be on this learning curve? We've deemed him the starter after one preseason game. I don't know, Coach. I mean, that's a whole nother can of worms and discussion, but these guys all need time. So I'm with you. I don't think the 49ers benefit from moving on from Trey Lance right now. Now, Trey Lance may want something different and they may acquiesce to his wants and needs. I don't know, but hey, I'd probably just sit on him for now and just see how it shakes out. Everything changes. As you know, they were down to their 4th quarterback when the season ended last year. So
yeah. Are we developers of quarterbacks or are we acquirers of quarterbacks and then we put them in a system that makes the job easier for them? Right. Why wouldn't you want to try to develop Trey Lance? I know you had major concerns about him coming out, about whether that was even going to work, but it's not like he's had much of a run. So
if you're not going to develop them, and we're talking about they as in the 49ers with him right now, and again, we're projecting, we don't know what they're going to say, but if they have seen something that's fatally flawed inside the way he's wired, then I could say, okay, we made a mistake. We have some sunk costs here. Let's move on. But that sunk cost might be as big of a price as anybody's ever paid to do what they did. That's why we said at the time, Mike, no matter what, I couldn't do it. Just there's not enough evidence here. And we gave them credit in that they were ballsy. They stepped up to do it. I'm not saying it's the right thing, but as it turned out, it's not. But
it's just so odd for a team that was in the championship window to go all in to make a move on a quarterback who's a long-term project. most of your all-in moves at that point when you're on the brink of winning a Super Bowl help get you over the top now, don't they?
Well, no doubt. And they gave the keys to the castle to him last year. They were going to give him until he got hurt. He was their guy last year. So they saw things a year ago in him that made them believe that after that first year, he could be a great player. And
Yeah.
obviously that has changed now. The only thing that's changed is he broke his leg. So
Yeah.
he really hasn't done anything to set back the project or the learning curve, except that it's a year later. So I'm
Yeah.
with you. It's
We'll
a
see.
tough spot. Yeah.
We'll see what they do. We'll see what they do and what they say. Don't want to put words in their mouths. My old colleague at ESPN, Bill Barnwell, reminded us today what players came out of that trade. So Miami moved up to 6 and took Jalen Waddle, then used the additional first-round picks for Tyreek Hill and Bradley Chubb. So that's 2 out of 3. Philadelphia moved down to 10 and took Devonta Smith. Boom. Dallas used the 12th pick for Micah Parsons. You ever hear of him? And San
Yikes.
Francisco got Trey Lance. There's a lot of there's a lot of players
There's a lot of
around there.
fates that are, yeah, there's 7 degrees of separation there, like we just talked about with regard to Mike Holmgren. But yeah, one move like this changed the fate in 3 or 4 cities.